Hi, it's Olivia, and today I have some picture book recommendations. If you know me, you know that these recommendations are for anyone of any age, which is something I discuss more in this video, which I'll link in the description. But whether for yourself or for a kid in your life or in the classroom, I hope even one of these books catches your eye. Let's start with Actual Size by Jenkins, which is such a fun book, especially for all the animal lovers out there. It brings to scale the size of various animals, and if they're really big, just parts of them like an eye. It's fascinating, and it's hard not to compare things with this one, like the size of your hand versus the gorilla's. I definitely matched my hand up to the gorilla hand on the cover, you know, Tarzan style. This next book sadly wasn't included with the big group of books because I only recently was able to recheck it out. It's quite popular at my library for good reason. Eyes That Kiss in the Corners by Joanna Ho, illustrated by Yoon Ho, is absolutely gorgeous. It's a story that came out this year about individual beauty, specifically of Asian children, and self-love when the main character notices that her eyes are different than her peers. The family love that's shown with the words and the pictures is so endearing, and this illustrator's work is just nothing short of stunning. It really is a beautiful book. You've got to check this one out. Now onto such a wholesome story of determination and love. My Rose in Piles of Coins by Talola Molel, and with watercolor illustrations by E.B. Lewis, follows a boy who so badly wants to save up money for a bike so he can help out his mom on market day. I like how this book takes place in Tanzania, where the author grew up, and it even includes a few words in Swahili and Maasai. One of the sweetest books, Maybe Tomorrow by Charlotte Aguel, illustrated by Ana Ramirez Gonzalez, follows Elba, who carries around a block everywhere that makes her sad and think darkly, and she meets Norris, who is constantly happy and surrounded by butterflies. It's a beautiful story that shows how a friend can simply be there for you, even if they can't take your sadness away. Do you hear that? I think it's somebody crying in the club. Anyway, here is Waiting for the Biblioburro by Monica Brown, illustrated by John Parra, and this is for the book lovers. It's delightful, and especially so because it's inspired by the man who actually does this. He comes to villages bearing a little mobile library on his 2 donkeys, and this is also bilingual with both the English and Spanish text. Now, I Want My Hat Back by John Klassen, I think I've mentioned in a past video, is one of the funniest kids books I have read, and every time I come across it, I like to reread it just to get another laugh out of it. It goes along with very simple text, and then it ends with a little plot twist that is definitely Klassen's taste for kind of darker humor that is also in his other book, This Is Not My Hat. And now for some love for the moms out there. Me and Mama by Cosby Cabrera is a love letter to the adoration and love that a little girl has for her mom. She simply wants to go everywhere and do everything her mom does, and it's so sweet, and this year it also won the Caldecott honor. Now, Prince and Knight by Daniel Hack, illustrated by Stevie Lewis, is a rhyming kind of typical fairy tale story of a prince in search of a bride, but he realizes that they're never quite what he desires. And so while battling a dragon, he meets a knight. And once this knight reveals himself, like I said, it's a typical fairy tale story, so it's kind of instant true love. Next, we have a book written by Olympian fencer Ibtihaj Muhammad with S.K. Ali, illustrated by Hatem Ali. I mean, what a team. And this story shows not only the beauty and love for wearing a hijab, but I love reading the main character's excitement to eventually start wearing one herself and how much she looks up to her sister. And it was in a really cute, modern, digital art style. Now, Ruby's Chinese New Year by Vicki Lee caught my attention because of the art style. It's illustrated by Joey Cho, and I recognize the very bright, vivid colors with the geometric style because I'd seen that artwork with Disney murals within certain hospitals, a children's hospital that I go to, and I've passed it several times, and so I really thought that was cool. And it takes us along with Ruby as we are introduced to the 12 Chinese zodiac animals. I kind of wish some of what was in the end and author's note was more incorporated, so I actually would recommend reading that end part first, especially if you're unfamiliar with the animals. Now, arguably the book with my favorite cover of the bunch, Queen of Tejano Music, Selena, is by Sylvia Lopez, illustrated by Paola Escobar, and it takes us through a journey of Selena's life. There is a decent amount of text beside really pretty spreads. I picked this up after Priscilla recommended it, and I have to agree with her that I like how her death is really only discussed in and afterward. I think it's very tasteful, and it focuses on the beauty of who she was and her legacy. The Princess and Warrior by Duncan Tonatiu, I didn't even realize was an interpretation of a legend of how the two volcanoes that overlook Mexico City were formed. One in particular looks like a woman lying on her side, and it's been the basis of myths for generations. Since I didn't know that, the ending took me by surprise. I picked this up solely because I like this illustrator's work, which you could spot from a mile away. He has a very distinct style, with all of his characters are always in like a side profile, and they have the same style face and ears and mouth. Whether or not you like the style, it's undeniably very recognizable, and I love that. Come On Rain by Karen Hess, illustrated by John J. Muth, takes you in the middle of a hot and muggy summer day, and this little girl is waiting for some summer rain. And I love the simplicity of it and the joy when the rain does come, and especially how her friends and her friends' moms look when they all are just enjoying the rain. Very sweet. Now we have Radiant Child, the story of young artist Jean-Michel Basquiat by Javaca Steptoe. This shows the inspirations and upbringing of Jean in his childhood and leading up to when his artistry really became recognized in the 80s. Clearly he has a very distinct style. All of the art by the author, Javaca, is directly inspired by Jean's work, and I think it does a good job of making you want to learn more about his life and personally research Jean's own artwork. And last but certainly not least is We Are Water Protectors by Carol Lindstrom, illustrated by Michaela Goad, about a young girl and her tribe vowing to protect their homeland that's being threatened by the Black Snake, which is inspired by the indigenous-led protests against the Dakota Access Pipeline. Something about the texture of the watercolor and how the Black Snake and its impact on the environment is depicted is so stunning, and it has so many gorgeous full spreads. I absolutely see why this just recently won the Caldecott Medal, which is the highest honor for an American children's book illustrator. So thank you for watching. I would love more picture book recommendations if you have any for me, and I will see you in another video. Bye.